Now, did you think writing music would be easy? I did. I scored feature films, written hundreds of library music tracks, and built a business teaching hundreds of composers. But composing itself was often a grind. So I spent years getting stuck after 8 bars and endlessly tweaking tracks that I never actually finished. I wish I'd known how to do it smarter. So to help you to finally finish your music and make composing feel easier, here are 20 lessons I learned the hard way that will help you to compose stronger melodies, write pieces that take your listener on a journey, and above all, actually help you to finish more music. So I used to really struggle with writing melodies. I'd sit at the piano, staring at the keys, and have no real idea where to even begin. Which note should I start on, or what shape should the melody take? I'd play a few ideas, but they felt random, like I was just throwing darts in the dark. It was frustrating, and it really made me feel that I really wasn't cut out for this. So then I stumbled on something that changed everything for me. I started with chords, and then added the melody over the top. Now sometimes this happened simultaneously at the piano, but it was always the chords that set me off. Suddenly I wasn't lost anymore. The chord progression set the mood, and it also gave me a clear set of notes to work with. At least half of the melodic notes playing over the chord should contain the pitches found in the chord. And that one shift gave me the direction and confidence, and my melodies started to actually sound like themes instead of random noise. So lesson number 1 is this. Don't start with melody, start with the chords. Chords set the emotional tone of your piece, and they give you a framework of notes that will make your melody stronger and more focused. It's a simple change, but it can take you from stuck and frustrated to writing melodies that you're actually proud of. If you want to get some inspiration to get you started with a progression, I've put together a chord progressions cheat book. It's packed with 62 progressions across a range of genres to help you get ideas flowing quickly. You can grab it free using the link below this video. Sometimes even with the chords, it can occasionally feel hard to find a melody. I remember one moment clearly. I was finishing my portfolio of pieces at the Royal College of Music, and I had one last piece to write. So I sat at the piano for hours, playing the same melodic shapes over and over, and nothing stuck. Every idea sounded like something I'd already written. I was stuck in a loop, and the deadline was getting closer. So I had to do something different. I went for a walk in the countryside away from the piano. So I recorded the chord progression I was working with and played it on my phone as I walked. Then I just hummed over the top, letting my ear guide me instead of my fingers. And suddenly, a strong, clear melody appeared. I think one of the best I've ever written. So lesson number 2 is this. Step away from your instrument and hum or whistle over your chords. When you get stuck at the keys, your muscle memory traps you in the same old finger patterns. But by using your voice and imagination, you'll discover fresh melodic shapes that your fingers would have never found. I can't tell you how many times I've been stuck halfway through writing a library track. I'd have about a minute and a half of material, and then I'd suddenly hit a wall. I'd start overthinking, do I need a whole brand new section, or a brand new melody? And the more I thought about it, the harder it got to finish. And then I realised the solution was much more simple. Instead of reinventing the wheel, I just copied a section I already had. But here's the key, I added 1 or 2 new instruments on top. A high string line, some extra percussion, or maybe even a brass swell. Suddenly the track felt bigger, more intense, and it carried me all the way to the 2-minute mark. So lesson number 3 is this. Don't overcomplicate finishing your tracks. Just copy a section you already have and add a couple of extra instruments. Keeps your music coherent, builds intensity naturally, and gets you to the finishing line without the stress of starting from scratch. So when I first started writing library tracks, I'd often just dive in and start writing without a plan. I'd keep adding new ideas, new sections, and new melodies. And before long, the music would start to wander. It didn't feel cohesive, and by the end, even I was confused about where it was supposed to be going. Then I discovered a simple trick that changed everything. Instead of trying to reinvent the structure every time, I started with a quick intro and then wrote a core A section, just 8 or 16 bars. And then repeat it, maybe add a variation, and then drop in a contrasting B section before circling back to A again. And that was it. Simple and clear, and it worked every time. So lesson number 4 is this. Keep your structures simple. Having a plan balances repetition and development, makes your music feel like a journey, and helps you to actually finish the track instead of getting lost along the way. So when I first started composing, a lot of my pieces just stayed at the same intensity. They would loop the same idea again and again. Now at first it sounded fine, but after a minute it got boring. There was no movement and no sense of story. And if I was getting bored, I knew listeners would be too. So I started paying attention to how the music evolved. Instead of looping, I'd gradually add new instruments as the track moved forward. Or sometimes I'd pull things back, drop the dynamics, or thin out the texture to give contrast. It gave the music a sense of direction, like it was always going somewhere. Suddenly, my tracks felt alive, and they kept the listener's attention. So lesson number 5 is this: make your music ebb and flow. Don't let it sit still, build, release, change texture, and change dynamics. The constant movement will make your music feel like a story unfolding, not just a loop repeating. Okay, so I'm a huge procrastinator. If something feels hard, my instinct is to put it off. When I was writing library tracks, there was no producers or directors breathing down my neck, so I'd spend 3 or 4 days tinkering with a single piece. I'd zoom in on tiny details, endlessly tweaking, and by the end, sometimes the track wasn't even that good. But the moment a real deadline came along, everything changed. When a director told me they needed a cue by the next morning, I had no choice but to focus. So I stopped overthinking and just wrote. And funnily enough, those cues often turned out to be the ones I was most proud of. So lesson number 6 is this: set yourself deadlines. Even if it's just an hour or 2, or a couple of days for a longer piece, deadlines force you to focus on what matters. They'll stop you from procrastinating and help you to actually finish music you're proud of. I'll never forget my very first lesson on the scoring program at USC in Los Angeles. I walked in so excited, clutching the score of an orchestral piece I just had recorded. I thought it was one of the best things I'd ever written. But within minutes, my new teacher had pulled out a red pen and had started circling bits everywhere. Woodwinds playing completely unrelated parts, each instrument in the brass section playing something different, and lots of clutter in the low end. By the time he was done, my score looked like it had all been crossed out. He made me realise that I'd been completely overwriting. Now that moment stung, but it taught me something important. Great orchestral writing isn't about filling every bar with as many notes as possible. It's about clarity, one strong melody in the foreground and simple supportive harmony underneath. As soon as I stripped things back, my music started sounding bigger, cleaner, and much more effective. So lesson number 7 is this: don't overwrite. Keep your melody clear, support it with strong but simple harmony, and resist the temptation to fill the page. Your music will immediately sound more powerful and professional. When I scored my very first feature film, a romantic comedy called Exit Strategy, I wanted to impress. I poured everything into writing the main theme, but every time I sent it to the director, it came back rejected. My melody was wandering all over the place, with no clear structure, and it just wasn't working. After a few attempts, I was frustrated and honestly worried I might not be able to crack it. Then I tried something different. Instead of chasing a big rambling melody, I focused on just 2 bars, a simple little motive. I repeated it, added subtle variations each time, together with the new idea at the end. Suddenly the theme clicked. When I played it for the director, he loved it immediately, and to this day, even some of my family can immediately sing it back. So lesson number 8 is this: build melodies from a short motive and repeat it with development. Repetition cements the idea in your listener's mind, while small variations keep it fresh. It's one of the most effective ways to create melodies that actually stick. So when I first started writing melodies, they often felt flat. They'd meander around, but they didn't really go anywhere. There was no sense of shape, no big moment to grab the listener. They sounded more like exercises than actual themes. So I quickly realised that I needed to start studying. Over the years, I've transcribed hundreds of melodies by the greats: film composers, classical composers, and even pop writers. And I've noticed something almost all of them had in common. The highest note, the emotional peak, almost always landed about 2/3 of the way through a section. And that one simple trick gave the melody a natural arc, a sense of lift and climax. So when I tried it with my own writing, the difference was huge. Suddenly my melodies felt like they were going somewhere, giving them more emotional impact. So lesson number 9 is this. Give your melody an arc by placing the high point about 2/3 of the way through a section. Create a natural climax that makes your theme feel like it's actually going somewhere. So a large part of film composing is problem solving. Sometimes it's about creating the right tone or emotion, or other times it's something really technical, like trying to fit a phrase exactly in between two cuts on screen. I remember scoring an action scene where I needed to fit in 8 bars neatly in between 2 cuts. I tried and tried, but with the tempo of the rest of the cue, it was coming in at around 7 bars, a pretty unnatural phrase length. So I was trying to figure out how to squeeze the music, and it was driving me crazy. Then after a lot of experimenting, I tried something I hadn't considered before, writing the whole section in 7/8. Suddenly everything clicked. The phrase fitted into 8 bars, and not only did it solve the timing issue, it actually gave the cue a really interesting rhythmic drive. So lesson number 10 is this. Embrace problem solving. Whether it's rhythm, harmony, or orchestration, every problem or challenge is a chance to find something better. If you experiment and stay curious, the solution you might find might not just fix the problem, it may become the best part of your piece. So when I first started scoring to picture, I thought the job was to hit every cut. I'd watch a scene and obsess over lining my phrases exactly with each edit. And the result? My music felt forced, chopped up, and it killed any sense of flow. Then during my mentorship with James Newton Howard at USC, he gave me a piece of advice that completely changed the way I approached scoring. He told me to watch the scene a few times, then turn the picture off and to just write. To not worry about the edits and to not chase every cut. Just to capture the overall tone of the scene. So I tried this on a love scene I was scoring. Instead of twisting my melody to fit awkward phrase lengths, I just wrote music that matched the mood I felt after watching it. And when I synced it back, it all worked beautifully. All I had to do was trim and tweak a little at the end, and the cue flowed naturally. So lesson number 11 is this. If you're scoring to picture, watch it a few times and then turn off and just write. You'll capture the emotional essence of the scene, and your music will feel much more fluid than if you're chasing every cut. So again, when I first started composing, I used to play it safe. I only used the chords that belonged in the key I was writing in. And while the music sounded fine, it always felt predictable, like it was missing something. Eventually I started experimenting. So instead of sticking with the safe diatonic chords, I occasionally tried reaching for something outside the key. So for example, in the key of C major, I moved from a chord of C major straight to an A major chord. Suddenly the music lifted in a way I'd never achieved before. It opened up a whole new palette of emotions and colours I could use. So lesson number 12 is this. Don't feel trapped by diatonic harmony. Take the risk of stepping outside the key. Even a single unexpected chord can completely transform the emotional impact of your music. I'll never forget the first time I was asked to pitch for a feature film. The brief landed in my inbox. I had to write 2 contrasting cues and they only had 24 hours. I remember feeling the pressure instantly. Could I really pull this off in time? It was the kind of test that would make or break my chance at the project. But here's the thing, I'd been writing every single day in the weeks leading up to it, scoring a project, a student short film called Golden Box. So when this opportunity came for a new project, I didn't freeze. I sat down, wrote both cues high on adrenaline, and even recorded a friend playing some guitar on a cue, and then delivered it on time. And the best part? I won the pitch and got hired to score the film. So lesson number 13 is this. Write as often as you can. Creativity is a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Daily practice means when the opportunities come, you'll be ready to grab them. Now, when I first started at music college, I honestly thought that once I had graduated, I'd have everything I needed to be a composer. I believed the degree would give me all the tools, all the knowledge, and that would be it. But then the reality hit me hard. I still had so much to learn. I gradually realised composing is a lifelong pursuit. Even after finishing my formal studies, I kept trying to develop by studying the greats. I transcribed melodies and chord progressions straight into my DAW from people like John Williams, Hans Zimmer, and Thomas Bergerson. I take notes on their orchestration choices, their instrumentation, and how they built emotion in their music. And every time I did, I picked up something new that I could apply in my own writing. So lesson number 14 is this. study the world-class composers. Transcribe their melodies, analyze their chord progressions, and take note of their orchestrations. Learning from the greats will sharpen your skills and help you to find your own voice. Now, for a long time, I only listened to film music. It was what I loved the most, and it felt natural to study the thing I wanted to write. But the problem was, when I sat down to compose in other styles, I didn't really know what I was doing. My ideas all sounded the same, and I didn't really have the tools to branch out. So when I was hired to score a documentary about Bitcoin, and the director wanted the score to have an electronica feel and vibe to it, I didn't really have an idea on how to approach it at first. So I forced myself to dive into music I'd never really listened to before. Artists like deadmau5 and Daft Punk. I studied their synth sounds and the way they layered their different electronic textures. And it worked. After some initial trial and error, I was able to write electronica style cues that fit the visuals, which the director loved. So lesson number 15 is this. Listen to various genres of music, not just film music. Study the classical composers to sharpen your orchestration, or explore other styles such as electronica, jazz, or rock. Anything that's not your normal listening habits. Because when a project pushes you into a new territory, that wider listening will give you the tools to deliver the music you need to write. Sometimes the hardest part of composing is just starting. You sit there staring at a blank session and no idea feels good enough to get you moving. I've been there stuck like that countless times, and it can feel paralysing. What helped me break through though was borrowing ideas to spark my own. So when a director gave me a temp track, I didn't copy it, but I'd study the instrumentation, the mood, or the orchestration choices, and use that as a jumping off point. Or other times, I'd take a chord progression from a piece I loved, move it into a different key, and let it guide me towards something fresh. And every time it gave me the springboard I needed to create something original that worked. So lesson number 16 is this. Don't be afraid to borrow, just not melodies. Use chord progressions, textures, or orchestration ideas as inspiration. They'll give you the spark you need to get started, and from there you can shape the music into something that's uniquely yours. So when I first started composing, the only feedback I got was from my professors. And while that was useful, it was just one perspective. I didn't have a wider community of people on the same journey as me. So when I finished a piece, I had no idea how it landed with different listeners. And now that I have my own community through my program Cinematic Music Made Easy, I can finally see the power of group feedback. Students post their tracks and other composers chime in with thoughts, ideas, and encouragement. A melody you thought was weak might be the part someone else loved most, or an orchestration choice you overlooked might inspire someone else's piece. Now that feedback speeds up your learning in a way no single teacher could. So lesson number 17 is this. Join an online community. Post your work, receive feedback, and then give feedback. You learn faster, gain fresh perspectives, and discover things about your own writing you would have never have spotted on your own. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on was thinking I could fix bad writing by concentrating on achieving a clear mix. So when one of my orchestral cues was sounding muddy and without any real clarity, I spent hours EQing, tweaking settings, and trying to polish it. But no matter what I did, the track still felt messy and unclear. So then I tried something different. Instead of fighting with the plugins, I looked at the actual orchestration. I realised my basses and cello were all too low, crowding the mix. So I rewrote the parts, moving them an octave higher. And instantly the track cleared up. Before I'd even touched the mix again, it sounded more balanced and powerful. So lesson number 18 is this. Focus on the notes and orchestration first and not the mix. A great arrangement will sound 85 to 90% of the way there before you even add plugins. Mixing should be the polish, not the foundation. When I first started making mockups, they always sounded flat and robotic. The notes were there, but they had no real life. No sense of a real player behind them. And the problem was, if your demos don't sound convincing, directors won't take the music seriously. Then, during a masterclass with John Powell, he mentioned something that stuck with me. Nothing ever leaves his studio without at least 2 continuous controllers working simultaneously on every MIDI region with long articulations, like sustains or legatos. He also stressed that for shorter articulations, it's essential to tweak the velocities, adding subtle variations the way a real player would. So I tried it, and the difference was night and day. My demos instantly felt more alive, more human, and much more convincing. So lesson number 19 is this. Program musical expression into your mockups. use at least 2 Midi CCs, such as expression, CC11, or modulation, CC1, for long patches, along with varying velocities for the shorts. Those small details are what makes your demos sound like actual music, instead of a computer playing notes. When you're starting out, it's tempting to cut corners on gear. I remember thinking, as long as I write great music, the sound quality won't matter. But the truth is, if your demos don't sound convincing, you won't land pitches and directors won't approve your cues, no matter how good your notes are. Now, this was a lesson I learned directly from James Newton Howard during my mentorship with him at USC. He told me that one of the most important investments a composer can make is in the essentials: a powerful computer with enough RAM, great sounding sample libraries, and the knowledge of how to get the best out of them. Because without that, your mock-ups won't do your music justice. So once I started following that advice, upgrading my setup and really learning how to program effectively, my demos immediately improved. I was able to compete at a professional level, win pitches, and actually get cues approved. So lesson number 20 is this: spend time and money on the essentials. Invest in the right computer, core libraries, and above all, learn your gear inside out. So those are 20 lessons I've learned the hard way that will help you to finally finish your music. But here's the truth: none of them will work if you don't know how to actually use your DAW properly. Because if you can't record your ideas quickly, load your sampled instruments, and shape your mock-ups, these lessons will just stay stuck in your head. So that's why the next video you need to watch is my beginner's guide to Cubase. It'll walk you through step by step through setting up your DAW and building the actual workflow you need to actually apply everything you've just learned. So click right here and watch that now, and I'll see you there.